Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked. There we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. We broadcast 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. Nathan is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. If you'd like to call us, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line is up and running, 605-477-3249, 605-477-3249. Rich Scheben is with us. Welcome, Rich Scheben.
Well, thank you, Vincent Finelli. How are you this morning?
Well, I'm doing well. I was just reading some of the Will Rogers quotes. You know, that well, I guess he was a philosopher. I mean, he said all kinds of things. He'd read the newspaper in the morning, and we'd go on stage and talk about what he read in the newspaper. And he said something that I think is absolutely correct. He said, senators are a never-ending source of amusement, amazement, and discouragement. How right he was.
Mm-hmm. Right on.
He also said, funny thing about being a U.S. senator, the only thing the law says you have to be is 30 years old. Not another single requirement. They just figure that a man that old got nobody to blame but himself if he gets caught in there. And I was in line at a store, and there was a coupon I was trying to use, and there was a fine, microscopic fine print that said I couldn't use this coupon. Well, I mean, you really need a microscope to read the fine print. So the guy behind me handed the cashier his coupon. He said, use mine, for Finelli. Now, I never met this guy before. We're just standing in line, never said a word to each other. And all of a sudden, this guy is helping me out, or trying to help me out with his coupon, which was a green coupon. Mine was a different color. And it was at Harbor Freight, and his didn't work either. So then we started telling jokes to each other about lawyers. And he said, he said, what are the three things that are most common that a senator says? He said, here, present, and not guilty.
Oh, boy.
So why am I mentioning this? Well, Rich, there's a story that I can't believe. Well, actually, I can believe it. This is how low can we go? Fargo, Wells Fargo, how low can we go? Well, there's this Florida Republican candidate, and she's a relatively pretty gal. Her name is Melissa Howard. She's 46 years old. Now, she said, she claimed that she had a degree, a college diploma, or a college degree, I should say. And there's a picture of her holding her degree. And, well, she didn't have one. So, so she's holding up this framed degree. Now mine is just a piece of paper. Okay, it's from a major university, but it's just a piece of paper. It's not laminated. It's not entombed in plastic to last forever. It's just a piece of paper. Well, hers was really fancy, and so this Florida Republican candidate admits that she did fake her college diploma, but vows to stay in the race and lead by example. Melissa Howard, 46, apologized Monday for lying about her college degree. She posted a photo last week of what looked like a diploma from Miami University in Ohio, after being accused of lying about her diploma. So she was accused of lying about her diploma, so she posted a picture with her diploma. The university sent out a statement saying that she attended the school but never actually graduated, and her diploma was fake. In her apology, Howard said that she would stay in the race and lead by example. And I have to read a little bit more because this explains why we're in such a mess with these politicians, these lying, cheating, stealing parasites. So a Republican, this is dailymail.co.uk, a Republican Florida State House candidate has admitted she lied about having a college degree that she never actually completed, but said she will stay in the race and lead by example from now on. Melissa Howard, 46, posted a photo of herself last week with what looked like a diploma from Miami University in Ohio after being accused of lying about her marketing degree. But the Ohio University later sent out a statement saying Howard had attended the school but never actually graduated. Okay. Howard, who is running for the Sarasota-based seat, apologized on Monday via her campaign Facebook page, admitted she didn't graduate from the school. I would like to, quote, I would like to apologize to my family and my supporters for the situation. It was not my intent to deceive or mislead anyone, she said. Let me say that a different way. I would like to apologize to my family and my supporters for this situation. It was not my intent to deceive or mislead anyone, she said. I made a mistake in saying that I completed my degree. What I did was wrong, and I set a bad example for someone seeking public service. Now, she said that it was not her intent to deceive or mislead anyone, but she did it multiple times. She lied about it. Then she posted a picture of what appeared to be her degree, and then she says, I didn't intend to mislead anybody. What a crock. This woman, well, I guess she has a right to run for office, and if people are so stupid that they vote for her to represent them, they will get a lying parasite. It makes me sick thinking about this kind of thing.
Yeah, and Vince, think about this. Think what I talk about so often, practice what you preach laws. If we had practice what you preach laws, she'd be booted on her butt and been fined and been in jail. How many politicians have said they were veterans, or said they were in combat, or said they were shot at out of a helicopter? Hillary
or
Clinton
said they had three Purple Hearts.
Yeah.
Or said they had three Purple Hearts.
Or how about politicians say islands are going to tip over? Or pass the bill and let's read it later. I mean, there's more jokes about our present system. We don't have a constitutional republic. We have a whole system where everybody's bought and paid for with no consequences. That's why we have to have the same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody and practice what you preach laws. We don't have anything like that. There's no accountability. We can't have a separate system of rules, laws, and accountability based on what group you're in, and that's what we're allowing.
No disagreement. And, well, here's something that Will Rogers said. The Ways and Means Committee is a committee that's supposed to find the ways to divide up the means. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. The Senate just sits and waits till they find out what the president wants, so they know how to vote against him. I mean, this is from the 40s, and he was absolutely right then. Nothing's changed with these parasites. But I really like the one about senators are a never-ending source of amusement, amazement, and discouragement. Absolutely true. So, Rich, practice what you preach. You say it many times over and over and over again. And my takeaway from that is very simple. And you've said it so many ways that if they can do it, we can do it. And I think we need to keep that in mind. If they can do it, we can do it. Because they're leading by example. They're showing us how to do it. So, class, it's incumbent upon you to avoid paying taxes legally. Avoid paying taxes. Do not support these parasites. Do not support them stealing our money and giving it to people who they don't like that can help them better their lives. What I'm saying is politicians take money from people they don't like. Take money from us and give it to people they don't like, who they expect favors in return. You know, what's the definition of a good politician? One who stays bought. We all know that. We all know it's true. We all know it's true. And if a politician came to town and I had a chance to meet with that person, I would not. I would not. And during the latest selection of candidates in the Missouri primary, I thought long and hard about this. And I selected almost no one because I didn't want to give these parasites who are running for office the idea that someone might even consider thinking about them. I want them to see that if there were 10,000 people at the polls voicing their opinions, I wanted them to know that very few people are really interested in these candidates. I just can't stand it. I just can't stand what's happening to us. I can't stand it the way the Missouri bills are written, such that you can't tell what they mean. Like the right to farm. Who came up with the right to farm bill? That's what it was called. The right to farm. Hey, you have a right to farm. I already have a right to farm. Well, the generally dumb public, the GDP, passed it. So now I still have a right to farm, but subject to the health department. More government regulations. And the generally dumb public voted for it. Yeah, we got to have the right to farm. What were they thinking? What were they thinking? Were they thinking that they didn't have a right to farm before? It's like, you have a right to earn a living. Well, hey, that sounds good. Let's vote for that. The right to earn a living. You already have a right to earn a living. Gosh, it makes me angry. We'll be right back. A politician is just like a pickpocket. It's almost impossible to get one to reform. Rich Scheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. Rich, where do you want to go today?
Well, since you went on your little rant about politicians, let me give a quote from Ayn Rand from Atlas Shrugged. I gleaned this from the X-22 report. And just a couple of sentences here. When you see that trading is done not by compulsion and not by consent, when you see that the dollar is flowing to those who deal, not in goods, but in favors. I think you said that too, Vince. When you see that men get richer by graft and by pull, basically deceit and fraud, and uses one's own position for their particular benefit, especially in public office, for obtaining their own personal profits or advantages. And your laws don't protect you against them, but protect them against you. When you see corruption being rewarded and honesty becoming a self-sacrifice, you know your society is doomed. And again, I gleaned that from the X-22 report. So this is where we are in society, and this is why, you know, what we do here is we stick up for the little guy. And as you know, those of you who listen to this show on a regular basis, I call the little guy basically the bottom 93% of income earners who are losing a ton of ground in America. The middle class is almost gone. And this is why I talk about, like we mentioned last segment, practice what you preach laws, QE for the people, all these ideas and solutions that we discuss on a regular basis, because like citizen review boards, we're at the point that corruption, manipulation, deceit, deception, nepotism has literally taken over every aspect of our economy and our life. And, pardon me, and we're at the point that not only does nothing matter, nothing makes sense, too many people are giving up. I see so much despair. And all people are trying to do is catch everybody doing some type of crime. You know, I get emails a lot, and I try to help as many people as I can. I remember, just came to mind, I got an email about a month ago about someone contacting me and saying, hey, I'm a German American, I want to buy land from you, and I need some advice, and we got to stick together and stuff like that. So basically, I emailed them back, and I said, I don't care what kind of an American you are. I don't care about your skin pigmentation shade. I don't care about anything. Your gender. et cetera, et cetera. I just care that you're an American. And I sent it back, and he never responded, because basically it was a troll fishing, so they can say, oh, this guy Rich from Montana, he's a controversial extremist, racist, bigot, sexist, misogynist, homophobe, intolerant, violent, hater, conspiracy theory, with an anti in front of every word they can think of, and an istrophobia on the back of every word they can think of, because that's what they do. The powers that be, especially the so-called left or Democrats that have been basically inherited the globalist society, or the globalist society, the big money are using the guise of the so-called liberal progressive, and they don't come up with ideas and solutions for the benefit of the people. What they need to do is solidify the status quo between the powers that be and the serfs. And that's why I always talk about the left-right paradigm being false and phony. It's a lot more management of the aristocracy versus the little guy than it is the left-right paradigm. And, I talk about economy so much, I think I'll do a little, I'll probably throw a few things in here and there, but I want to talk about voter fraud, since, Vince, you kind of went in this direction a little bit.
Before you do, can I just say this?
Sure.
Just to nail this down. So I'm looking at this picture of Melissa Howard, 46-year-old, in Florida. And she's sitting on the white sofa in a dress with her mother. It looks like her mother. And they're really proud of this framed diploma or degree from Miami University. So here she's using her mother as a prop to say, I'm proud of my daughter. Look at her. Look at the degree. Look at her. Look at me. Look at the degree. So I'm looking at the Daily Mail, and this really has me frosted. This Melissa Howard gal, this 46-year-old parasite, wants to be a parasite. Probably is a parasite, is a liar. She posted a picture of herself on the sofa with what looks like a diploma or a degree from Miami University in Ohio, after being accused of lying about her marketing degree. So there she is on the sofa. She's on the left, and the framed document is in the middle, and her appears to be her mother's on the right, and they're so proud of each other, and they're just sitting there, and it's a lie. Now, how is it possible that a mother would not know that her daughter got a degree or not? How is it possible that they wouldn't know? I mean, my parents knew that I got a degree. They knew what my grades were. They knew the progress. They knew how much time I spent in school. They knew about, I'm talking about my bachelor's. They knew about that. They knew about my master's. How is it possible that this gal's mother wouldn't know? So the two of them are perpetrating a fraud in order to perpetrate more frauds, right? While being an alleged representative in Florida. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. And I know a guy who's a parasite in the corrupt state of Missouri. He's a politician. And he voted for ethanol, ethanol and fuel. And I was in the vehicle with him, my truck one day, and I said, you voted for that? What's the matter with you? I'm paraphrasing. Didn't you take a science course? Didn't you go to school? Don't you know that it takes more than a gallon's worth of energy to produce a gallon of ethanol for fuel? Don't you know that? How could you vote for something like that? He told me I didn't understand the pressure. That means threats or bribes. That means that, well, shoot, if I didn't vote for that, heck, they'd repossess my Jeep or my house. I wouldn't get all these lavish gifts. I wouldn't be able to take these junkets to South America, on letting my constituents think that I'm actually working for them. Well, I'm actually on vacation with my family, sipping wine. That's what's going on. And when you talk about us as the serfs, you're absolutely right. These guys act like they work for us, and they're actually only working for themselves and their personal pleasures. They will, in my opinion, push their wives and children and families aside for their own personal greed. To me, calling someone a politician is like the worst possible word I could use. There's no word worse to me than calling someone a politician. It means the lowest form of life, lying, cheating, stealing, all the negative things you can think of, all wrapped up into one word, politician. Rich, do you feel anything similar, or was it just me?
Well, yeah, let me go into a rant of my own, if you don't mind. First of all, when all these things happen, like this woman saying she got a degree, it's just like some of the things I mentioned before the break. With politicians that say they've been in combat, they've received Purple Hearts, they've been shot at in helicopters, all this stuff. Basically, the media, this is why I always say the mainstream media, lawyers, judges, bankers, and politicians have sold out America. They've definitely sold out the bottom 93 of income earners. And they put 100 times the effort to promoting the lies and propaganda, and 1/10 of 1% the effort to basically correct and admit the lies that they've done. And that's how they do it. It's kind of like just kind of how Wall Street works. Nothing makes sense, but the bottom line is 85% of the investors, the little guy, buys high and sells low. And you have all these big companies, the FANGs, the Google, Facebook, Twitters, they're controlling everything, eliminating free speech, and they're conducting crimes against the Bill of Rights and Constitution, which allows for all the collusion, all the racketeering, all the abuse of antitrust monopoly laws. And as long as the politicians sign the dotted line, we'll censor speech, even though Google is with China right now creating databases of social behavior, basically saying if you speak up, you're not going to get to travel or do commerce or anything like that. Apple's doing. Look what these companies are doing. They're purging data. They're rewriting history. They're literally in the book-burning era of this Twilight Zone episode that we live in of censorship. They're practicing treason, espionage, sedition, racketeering. When people are losing, when they no longer can compete in the arena of ideas and solutions, that's when they censor speech. That's when they eliminate rights and take away our freedoms, liberty, and justice, which is only for the little people who are losing those rights. And this is why I talk about the same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody, because especially in the context of getting a job, if we keep lowering our bars of standards and expectations for the purpose of making the little people submissive to break our will, we can't compete as a country because we've rewarded mediocrity for so long. The important things that matter to us, opportunity, knowledge, ingenuity, productivity, innovation, things that can separate us from the pack to make us successful, to make us live our dreams, our goals, to be happy, is no longer available for the little guy. So with all the money printing that happens, all the subsidies and the special interests and the PACs and the lobbyists that have where these big companies have the benefit to basically foment hate and pocket their own wealth with the fascist system that they've created over the last 20 years, it's making it almost impossible. And see, everything that they do, the Dems, which we really need to call them the globalists, everything they do is to chase votes for the Democrat Party. They're not trying to create prosperity for the bottom 93% at all. And, you can just look at some of the things that's happening with the stock market. Now for example, the Swiss National Bank owns over $100 billion of U.S. stocks and our debt, bonds. Not to mention I shouldn't even say our Federal Reserve, because it's a private organization that doesn't have any accountability to audit. And that includes all the central banks around the world, because most countries, as well as there are like 195 countries, somewhere around there, and most of them have the Rothschild central banks. Now, have you ever noticed that the skirmishes and the wars that occur are with the countries that don't have Rothschild banks? I don't think I need to say any more about that. But when you look at the wealth effect it creates on paper, it basically doesn't go to the people. It goes to the elite, and they get the digits in their bank accounts, and they buy up all the hard assets. But it's all about the vote. You know, it's not about, well, let's talk about, since we're talking about votes, I was going to go off into a tangent before the break. Let me just mention a couple of highlights here, Vince, on voter fraud. Here is voter fraud, 670 ballots cast in Georgia precincts for just 276 voters. 170 registered voters in Ohio, 12th district listed over 170 registered voters listed at over 116 years of age. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. This is why, here's another article, the majority of Democrats want illegal aliens to vote. See, and this is part of the corruption. This is part of it's so obvious that the people are waking up, and the powers that be, who have bought and paid for their politicians, their lawyers, their judges, their bankers, they are desperate for votes. And this is why they're doing all this. And I got to say, you know, since I just read the highlight of this article, I just got to talk just for a few seconds. Trump it has nothing to do with skin pigmentation, shades, or gender or sexual orientation. Immigration, what the powers that be, they want to foment hate and race wars. Trump doesn't want to eliminate immigration. I've read the stuff I've seen the stuff that he says. He wants to shut down borders and just vet skill sets for people to come in here. And this is a new article I just read this morning. More than half of foreign refugees are on taxpayer-funded food stamps. Now, the American people are broke. Now, for those of you who listen to this show on a regular basis, you know I really like to give a lot of math and a lot of data. You know, for example, I've been saying for years that 60% of Americans have $1,000 or less in their savings account. Well, now I'm reading it's up to 69%. And 80% of people live paycheck to paycheck. Why, if 80% of the illegal children enter the U.S. without their parents, plus a lot of these so-called kids, in quotes, are adults, and if the American people are broke and 80% live paycheck to paycheck, it has nothing to do with what group you're from. Every negative thing that comes from everything, the people who get affected more are the poor and the middle class, the same people who fight our wars. We have over 4,300 Americans being killed every year by illegal alien criminals. Over 900,000 convictions for illegal felonies. Why should the poor and the middle class have to be subjected to this every year? We'll be back after the break.
Yep, going into a break. David, you're up next. We'll be right back. Rich Sheben's with us. David in Illinois, thank you for being so patient and holding. You're on with Rich Sheben. Welcome. David in Illinois?
Yeah, you there? You there?
Yeah, we're here. Go ahead, please.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
You were talking about politicians, and I used to work for the state of Illinois, and I was around a lot of politicians ever since I was a kid because of my father's work and things. So when I seen a lot of things happening at the place I was working, I was young. I thought you take it to the politicians and they were supposed to do what, should be done. And instead, they had a representative approach me by two major politicians, and they said if I shut my mouth and play ball, I can go far. But I wouldn't. And then they actually even got a hold of my father, and he called me from his federal office and chewed me out and said, if I don't play ball, I will never work again. And that's exactly what happened. And they even covered stuff up from the state police, and they just hid the whole situation that was happening. It was terrible what was happening at that facility.
Mm-hmm.
What facility are you talking about, David?
That's one of the reasons why I'm pretty vocal about having whistleblowers be heroes. We need to speak up. At the police force, at every level, city, county, state, federal government, because it's all run by corruption. And this is why the mainstream media, depending on what focus group you believe or what poll you believe, there's somewhere between a 3 and 17% believability rate. You know, and this is why we have the new media or the alternative media, whatever you want to call what we do, is because it's so corrupt and people can no longer control their own destiny. And that's why I bring up the fact that a lot of this propaganda, lies, and false flags is for the vote. It's so the globalists can destroy America from within and bring them down to other third world countries and banana republics and create a world government. Everything is about the vote. But, David, I'll let you continue if you have other things to say. But I certainly appreciate what you're saying.
After I came out with that, the information, he was furious at me, so he said, now I have to be the one to follow you around and keep track of you to make sure you'll never talk, you'll never be allowed to testify. Now, they had court hearings on this, and I was never allowed, my name was never allowed to be mentioned, put in anything, or nothing. And I had to deal with him. They
testify about what? David, testify about what?
Okay. I worked at this school. I went to school there finally. I went to school at the Illinois School for Visually Impaired, a state school. I went to school there for a few years to finish out high school. Then there was incidents happen there where I saved 2 kids' lives there, and they didn't report it to anybody. And an officer and a paramedic said, you should be the one working here. So I did. I went back there, and I got a job there and started working there. But I didn't realize it was as bad as it was. They were stealing money. I got master keys to the place where I worked there. I worked there when I was going to college. And they were stealing money. I would find the money. They were having kids that were molested and attacked in the dorms when the cottage parents were watching TV. And they were keeping this. They weren't reporting this stuff. There was rapes, and they were feeding the kids food that had worms on it. And I said, I'm not dealing with this. I'm not doing this. And they actually, that's when I had politicians approach me. I asked one. I said, look, this is wrong. This stuff's happening here. I didn't realize it was going to come down on me. And, you know, but they just kept everything hidden. And, you know, the state police came in and put orders of no shredding. Well, I had master keys. I walked in there. I was in charge to get rid of the shredding. They thought I was going to hide it. No, I put it so somebody found it. And I sat there and watched. I was there when they found it. Well, the state police came back in and said, wait, we had no shredding orders. And they finally took all the file cabinets out of there because they were sitting there. They had shredders going all the way down the hallway.
David, you want to hold through the top of the hour break and tell us more about these crimes? Okay. David's with us, live in Illinois. Rich Scheben. We're all set, cocked, locked. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Rich Scheben's with us live in Montana, offgridmontana.com. David in Illinois was sharing with us some of the thoughts. He was telling us about a facility in Illinois for the visually impaired. He mentioned that food was being served to those at the facility with worms. Money was being stolen at the facility. Rapes were occurring at the facility. Documents were being shredded. David, did I misrepresent anything that you've just said?
No, that's just the highlights. There was one kid almost hung there. I was the one as a student had to undo the knot when I seen it happen. And I'm like, I couldn't get it off the kid's neck. His arteries were popping out. His eyes were ready to shoot out of his head. And they didn't tell anybody. You know, this kid had a rope burn by the time I got it off his neck.
What why was this child being hung? Was he doing it to himself? Was she doing it to herself? Was it the authorities? What was going on?
We had what they did when I was a student there, and what they did afterwards is they would pick 1 or 2 children that they kind of can control, and they would walk around and let them be the poster children. Okay, they used them to get money, to get all kinds of things. So at that time, when that situation happened, they had this one star athlete, and this kid did everything. And so he went around, and he got people mad at people and get them into trouble. And this kid, he had not the mental understanding to do anything he was saying. He was going along with this kid, and he would go around having his kids saying how he wanted, I'm supposed to molest these kids, and I'm supposed to do this and this and this, and he had no idea what he was saying. And so that's what wound up happening to him as a retaliation. And I'm trying to tell these people, I'm like, hey, this kid, you can't, no, and this is, I stayed away from people like that, and I mean, one kid got thrown through a glass door window. Now, you tell me if I did the right situation here. I got him out of the window. He actually cut all his arteries in his arm, okay? And there was blood he was bleeding out. The cottage parents were watching TV. They didn't even want to call 911. I went and got a tourniquet, immediately helped do that, and then I had to fight for the phone to call 911. They were going to wait until the person in charge that they would track down seen what to do. And by the time 911 showed up, they told them, I'm the one that fought and called. And they said, if you didn't call, he'd be dead. And they just wouldn't care. They would keep that stuff a secret because they didn't want the public to know, and they were afraid the place would get closed. Now, when I went to work there, they would hand out every time the kids would go home every month. And they would give us a list of the kids that were listed at the school. And that's how many students they turned into the state for funding. The problem was, there was 40% of the kids, they didn't go to school there. They weren't even students. They weren't there at all. And I'm like, these kids, they're not even here. And they're like, you need to shut up about it. And that's what they were doing. And now they would do an audit once a year. And mind you, I have master keys. I was in buildings when people weren't there. And my schedule was kind of where I would go off to college and then come back. So they'd never know where I was. And they were doing an audit. I've seen them do a couple times. And parents would send, things for their kids while they're there. Products like microwaves, things like that at TV. They were taking and adding their products at the parents' home, and they would make a barcode from said state of Illinois on it and put it on that and say the state just bought a new TV. It's now in our inventory. We can use that money for something else.
So they, it's clear to me, as you said, that the money that for that microwave oven would go elsewhere, maybe in somebody's pocket. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I've seen them do this directly, and I'm like, that's legal, isn't it? They said, where's the state of Illinois? That's what their comments would be.
I'm thinking about what Rich Scheben said. We were talking about voter fraud. This is, when you talked about students not being there, students on the rolls that actually are being paid for by the state for this institution, they're not students, and it was made up. That's what you're saying, right?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Made up students. That's like made up voters. That's what Rich Scheben was talking about, right, Rich?
Yeah. See, this is why we need citizen review boards, because the state, the government needs supervision. They are so blunt and overt in their criminal actions right now because they feel nothing can happen to them, and nothing does. Look at all the white-collar crimes. Look at all the too big to fails and too big to jails. Look at all that's one of the reasons I talked about those three highlighted stories that I mentioned earlier about voting fraud. Dead people are voting. People are crossing borders, not just countries, but states. Illegal immigrants are voting. Voting machines are being fixed. Hacking is going on. I mean, this is why we all need to read up, research up, speak up, and the silent majority, like what you're doing, David, needs to speak up and raise up, because there's a war on free speech, and they're using censorship, and that's why I mentioned the FANG stocks, on how they've sold out, and they've become the treasonous class. We need everybody and not hyphenated Americans. We need to all be regular Americans, not based on what race, gender, sex, sexual orientation, religion, ideology. All this race baiting, gender baiting, all this crap has to stop. We all need to speak up. Unless we have the same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody in American soil, and it's based on truth, nothing's going to change. The silent majority must stand up. We have to speak up. We have to do something about it. The government is bought and paid for. Our lawyers, judges, politicians, and bankers are bought and paid for. Look, we've had so many millions of Americans lose their life for our present freedom and liberty, often by false flags created by the elite. Often these people have funded both ends of the war so the bankers in the hierarchy of the military-industrial complex could have profits. That's why
David,
I'm not
what's
a
the
big
biggest
fan of GDP. Pardon my rant.
David, what's the biggest crime you've seen, David?
The biggest crime I've seen, if you're talking about when I was forced to go to work with my dad in law enforcement, or you want to know about the one at the school? So I have.
It doesn't matter. What is the
okay.
biggest? What's the biggest crime you've seen?
The biggest crime that I think that I'm aware of is probably the situation me and my friend had with the John Wayne Gacy. I don't know if you heard of him, but
Go tell us the story, please.
Okay, I had a friend of mine. My dad would pull me out of school, so he stayed with me to finish out school. So since, he was there, we would go to the river to get food. That was our free grocery store since we didn't have no food. Well, one day we took a rifle, and the guy came. There was miles of woods. They found 2 bodies there already. And so we wouldn't go there by ourselves because we didn't. They assumed they drowned. So this guy came out behind us when we came across this site, and we found some boys' clothes and things like that. We didn't know why that site was there and what they were making. Well, the guy came up, and he tried to sneak up behind us. He tried to get us to go home with him in his basement, and he kept lying. I kept catching him lying, but he really wanted to know what the gun was, and he didn't want us messing with the clothes and whatever that big round ball was covered up in this area. But it's what the kid was doing. The kid looked like he was in shock. I mean, I can't even explain the way the kid was, really, and get you to understand. But the kid, when he mentioned us going home in his basement with him, he tried to tell us we could set up a range. Then he said he has a range in his basement. And then he said he had about 15 guns we could shoot in his basement, all we wanted, but we just had to go home with him. And this guy was really, he wanted us to go with him bad. But once he mentioned the basement, my friend looked like he was going to take off. And after he left, and the guy was actually going to look like he was going to throw the little kid at me. I mean, it's almost like he was going to attack the kid to make him talk. So then the kid, like somebody turned on a switch, and he said, "Look, you can come with you. You'll be safe. Nothing will happen to you."
So what was the crime? What was the crime?
But the thing is, that kid's missing. After my dad finally is dead, I was not allowed to talk about that guy. We also found a car. We found some teeth that were fresh teeth. They would not let us talk about it. We were not allowed to talk about it. Do you know who the guy was? Who was this guy? Who was this guy? He was taking kids home in his basement and hacking them and cutting them to pieces.
But do you know who he was? Did you ever find out?
John Wayne Gacy.
And you met him?
Yes. Then the kid that he tried to use, now that my father's dead, I talked to somebody about it because I couldn't see. I could see then. I can't see pictures now. And they said I identified him exactly. And I talked to the lawyer of the family that's looking for their kid. I tried to tell the FBI about it. They don't want to talk about it. And because there was a cop that knew about this stuff, and he didn't do anything about it. He didn't let us testify or anything. Now, I know about shootings.
You're talking about John Wayne Gacy Jr. He was an American serial killer and rapist.
Yes.
In Cook County, Illinois.
Yes, that's where I lived at and grew up. And there was a kid, one of his kids in there. I knew it. I suspected it. We tried to tell my dad about it. We even found a car that was ditched in one of the lakes. You had to climb down the cliff to find it.
John Wayne Gacy was convicted of 33 murders. Is that the guy you're talking about?
Yes, that's the guy we're talking about.
Okay, David. Thanks so much for being with us. I'm sure you'll call again.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
If you want me to call again, I will.
Yeah, please do. Rich Sheben's with us. We'll be right back. So, David in Illinois was telling us about John Wayne Gacy, G-A-C-Y Jr. And he was an American serial killer and rapist. He sexually assaulted and tortured and murdered at least 33 teenage boys and young men between 1972 and 1978 in Cook County, Illinois, which is known as metropolitan Chicago. All of Gacy's known murders were committed inside his Norwood Park ranch house. His victims were typically induced to his address by force or deception, and all but one of his victims were murdered by either asphyxiation or strangulation with a makeshift tourniquet. Gacy buried 26 of his victims in the crawl space of his home. The other victims were buried elsewhere on his property, while the bodies of the last known 4 victims were discarded in the Des Plaines River. Convicted of 33 murders, Gacy was sentenced to death in 1980 for 12 of the killings. He spent 14 years on death row before he was executed by lethal injection at Stateville Correctional Center in 1994. That's the person that David in Illinois was talking about. That came from Wikipedia.org. Rich, I was talking to a politician, someone I intensely dislike. He told me that this guy was a Republican. He told me what they do when a Democrat candidate is being interviewed on a talk radio broadcast. The Republicans would have one of their minions call in and say something like, "Thank you for running for office. I really like some of the things that you're doing," and to ingratiate the caller to the candidate on the air. And then the candidate would say, "I appreciate that. Thank you so much." And then the caller would say, and I like some of your ideas. Just have a question. Are those pedophilia charges still pending? That's what they do. That's what these parasites do to other parasites. Who thinks like that? Well, according to this parasite politician in the corrupt state of Missouri, the Republicans think like that. I'm not saying the Democrats are different. I'm just saying that that's what he told me. And this guy was high-ranking. I mean high-ranking. And did you know that politicians in the state of Missouri carry badges, gold badges? And they are unique. They have their number, the number of the representative, and their name on the badge. And they flash their badges. It's like a get-out-of-jail-free card. It gives them special privileges. When the cops pull them over, the politicians flash their badges and say, "Hey, I'm one of you. I'm just like you. I'm the guy who votes for your raises." That's what they do. They're in a club together. So if you don't think that politicians get special preferential treatment and they're in a class above the bottom 93, you're mistaken. I know for a fact it's true. Rich, what you're saying is absolutely, positively true. And the Capitol Police in Washington, D.C., what do? Their job is to protect the politicians so that you don't hear about the crimes that the politicians commit. It's their job. You think they're there to protect you? You're mistaken. Rich?
Yeah, the politicians are there to dupe you. They are there to play you and use you, just like the bankers and the judges and the lawyers. It all depends on what group you're from. That's why I always talk about standing for principle. Same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody, truth, and if they do it, then you can do it. Now, that is the simplified version. I mentioned more detail and specificity. But to talk about our last caller, or last David that called in, when he was talking about John Wayne Gacy, I did hear about that. That was an American tragedy. There's no doubt about it. But I want to go off into a little tangent. What if we couldn't say about these crimes that have happened, like free speech? We couldn't use free speech anymore. What if we turned into the UK, what's supposed to be our allies, and people like Tommy Robinson, who is fighting for the kids versus in pedophilia crimes?
Well, hold that thought. Let's talk about free speech. Let's talk about it when we come back. We're going to be talking about a topic that's very important to Rich Scheben and me. And you. Free speech. Rich?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of things that get pushed under the rug. When talking about John Wayne Gacy, or it doesn't matter who does what crime. You know, the powers that be are going to call you a racist, bigot, sexist, misogynist, homophobe, intolerant, violent, hater, conspiracy theorist, and all these buzzwords, so people shut up. It's a tool to make people submissive and break their will. But look what happened to Tommy Robinson. I was trying to give him as an example what happened in the UK. You know, so many of the big politicians were saying that the UK is our ally and the EU is our ally. Well, the EU is not allowing free speech. People are even getting arrested for posting things on the Internet, even if it's true. I mean, here Tommy Robinson is trying to fight for little kids when he was talking about outside the courtroom regarding these pedophilia grooming gangs. And he got arrested. So we have to ask ourselves, is the EU, which is unelected officials, and the UK, which the people voted on Brexit, it's pretty obvious that the powers that be in every rank of politician, especially lawyers, judges, bankers, they're all bought and paid for. They need chaos. They need infighting. They need wars to cover up. It's like austerity. All that does is penalize the little guy for the mistakes of the aristocracy. And, you know, it's just like, I'm going to go off into a little tangent here. I'll give an example of somebody who has guts. You know, James Woods, he's a Hollywood guy, been in a lot of movies. He talked about how there's a war on boys. You know, how much longer can we notice the fact that the elite are doing everything for the vote? Now I'm going to bridge into a quote that was given, I think I mentioned this on the air once, by Rachel Tripp. And she was talking about the Women's March that happened not that long ago. And it's basically her closing remarks. I'm just going to read that and quote her. Encouraging this demographic to vote, run for office, and support those initiatives in the name of female empowerment is the ultimate smokescreen of agenda setting under a false premise. Thousands of women are allowed themselves to become patsies of the corrupt big government swamp. My sidebar here, it's really a septic tank, that they claim to be working to rid themselves of. The conglomeration of seemingly disconnected messages begins to make sense when viewed through the lens of the goal to elect Democrats. The Women's March has the opportunity to bring women of all backgrounds, political beliefs, races, and socioeconomic statuses in a show of solidarity after multiple years of increased racial tension, partisan animosity, and rising government power. Instead, the movement produced a sloppy, organized, poorly formed, and confusing effort that used their very supporters as unknowing pawns in a bigger political game. Far from being a resource for women, it has instead disrespected them, implying with these actions that women are gullible and can be baited and used for political advantage. Everything is about the vote. Everything is about distract, dumb down, and divide the American people. The powers that be, especially through the mainstream media, their job is to manufacture perception, pity, guilt, and ideology, swaying public opinion and running the narratives, memes, themes, and talking points. It's all about a divide and conquer strategy. Everything that we hear and see, like 95%, is under these strategies, which are all under the category of political correctness. We have to stop defining political correctness as affirmative action, quotas, or telling a joke in the hallway. Political correctness should be defined by its antonym, and that is truth. Antonym means the opposite, okay? That's what political correctness is. That is our number one enemy for the bottom 93%, for the little people who are losing control of their destiny. Political correctness, again, defined by its antonym, truth, is our number one enemy. Because we can talk economy, we can talk finance, we can talk political correctness and all these different 1,000 subsets under political correctness. We can talk about social issues. We can talk about political issues. It's all smoke and mirrors because it's all meant to get everybody at each other's throats. We are allowing the elite to poison us against ourselves. And until we realize this truth, this definition, we can't do anything about it. And this is why I talk about ideas and solutions so often. From QE for the people, to practice what you preach laws, to standing for principle, to citizen review boards, all the things I talk about can fix this phony, corrupt system and economy and everything that goes with it almost overnight. We can fix everything. But the people in charge have an addiction to power, money, and control. And they don't want the status quo to go. Well, now that we're turning into a caste system where the people can no longer control their own destiny and move up on the ladder of success and save money, everybody's losing ground. And this is why the silent majority needs to step up. We need to wake up. We need to read up. We need to research up. We need to speak up. We need to vote up. Pardon my rant, Vince, but I know we're running out of time, so hopefully that'll be my last rant of the morning.
You mentioned divide and conquer, and that's what the cops do. The cops will separate people. They'll separate people into separate interrogation rooms to divide and conquer. Or if they're on the street, they will handcuff people and separate them and divide and conquer. You're absolutely right. We're talking about free speech. And, of course, Alex Jones on this network, GCNlive.com, or Genesis Communications Network, as we're known, has been attacked. And he has been expelled from Apple, Facebook, and Spotify, and to the delight of many liberals. And I don't think what they understand is that free speech has been attacked. And we may be next. We meaning all of us, not just USA Prepares, all of us. And do you want one opinion, or do you want multiple opinions to make your decisions from? Do you want to read from one source, or do you want to read from many sources and ferret out the truth? There's a lot of fake data out there. There's information being delivered which is not true. So I, for one, am outraged. If I had Apple stock, I would sell it. If I had Apple products, I would not want to renew my relationship with Apple Computer. As far as Facebook is concerned, I have a deliberate plan to dump Facebook. And I'll tell you what it is, class. I use my real name on the radio. I don't have an alias on the radio. My real name is Vincent Finelli. The page that relates to me on Facebook that I use for one purpose, and that is to post what we're talking about and who's on the air today. It's the only thing I do with Facebook. I changed my name. I changed my last name on Facebook to Survivalist. So if you want to find me, it's Vincent Survivalist. And then the next thing I'm going to do is change my email address. And the next thing I'm going to do is change more information about me. It will all be false. And then I will delete my Facebook account. And the idea is if they say, let's look up where Vincent Survivalist lives. There's no such person. And I am going to change my name again, and I'm going to pick the most common name. So there'll be more of that name than any other name. Think about that. You may want to do the same thing. Facebook, CIA tool. Do I want to be watched anymore? Absolutely not. Zuckerberg. We've all been Zuckerberged. I despise him. He can buy and sell me many times over. He's interested in what everybody's doing. He is the queen of peeping toms. He looks effeminate. His mannerisms are effeminate. That's why I call him the queen. Biologically, he's probably a guy. My mother would be upset if she heard me talk like this. I'm sorry, Mom. That's how I feel. I despise people. I despise people who want to steal from me. I despise people who want to cheat me. I despise people who lie to me. I despise people who want to pick my pockets. I despise that and more. It makes me angry. It makes me angry that when I think of cops who are forced by their jobs into ticketing people for trivial things because they have to keep their quota up in order to keep their job. I say, if that's what you have to do, dump your job. Do something honest. Do something to help people, not harm people. And I got to tell you, for those cops who are listening, I believe that the time will come when the country falls apart where people will remember the bad things that bad people have done. And they'll say, you know what? And I had this discussion off air with one of our instructors. And I said, I believe that people will remember that their grandfather's house was sold on the courthouse steps for back taxes they couldn't pay for economic reasons. And the people who are involved in those crimes will probably see the wrath as times get worse. Class, I've said it before, I'll say it again. 99% of the cops give the rest a bad name. Case in point. Article, dailymail.co.uk. Railroad apologizes for leaving a bait truck full of Nike sneakers in a black Chicago neighborhood to draw out would-be thieves as a joint undercover sting with police. The Norfolk Southern Railroad apologized for using a bait truck to lure thieves. The truck full of designer shoes, the trucks, we're talking tractor trailers, the trucks full of designer shoes were left near a populated area in early August. The open trucks were meant to entice thieves who would later be arrested. The trucks were placed in a largely black, let me say it a different way. The trucks were placed in a largely black, impoverished Chicago neighborhood. The trucks were seen 2 days in a row with officers allegedly hiding nearby. 3 people were arrested during the 2-day sting, authorities said. So here's what they did. The cops had 2 tractor trailers loaded with Nike sneakers. They left the trucks unlocked, open, to see if anyone would come by and help themselves to these designer Nike sneakers. My questions are, who paid for the 2 truckloads of sneakers? Did Nike provide them as a gift to the cops? Who authorized the entrapment? Why has the chief of police not been arrested for encouraging crime? Why has the mayor not fired the police chief? Why would anyone trust any cop? Who thinks this stuff up? They sit around in a conference room and say, I tell you what, let's go get some tractor trailers and let's fill them full of Nike sneakers and let's put them in a black neighborhood. And you know what? I'll bet you there are people who live in that neighborhood, predominantly black, that'll go and steal these sneakers. Then we can arrest them. And you know what's good? That's so good because we can all increase our notches on our arrest belt because we've arrested the sneaker thieves. We've provided the sneakers. We've provided the opportunity. We've provided everything. All we had to do is encourage these people to show up and commit crimes that they would probably not ordinarily do. Can you imagine? This is what the police are doing. Can you imagine? And so I think back of when I was in 3rd grade, maybe 2nd grade, and I was told, hey, you see that guy in blue? If you're ever in trouble, you go see him. You wonder why black people run from the cops. The cops say stop, and the black people in the city say, I don't think I want to be here. I think that guy's going to shoot me in the back. So they try to get away and save their lives, and the cops shoot them in the back. You know, nobody in my family thinks that, nobody in my family thinks that when the cops show up, everything's going to be great. In my world, when they show up, things get worse. Yes, I'm angry. I'm angry. Because cops are people with guns who are using them to tell us what to do. And many times, they're in the wrong, meaning the cops are in the wrong. I saw a police car heading toward our road. I borrowed a phone and got a message to our family. Lock the gate. Lock the gate. Lock the gate. Why would I say that? Because I don't think anything good's going to happen if the police show up. I've told our sheriff, do not trespass. Do not come to our farm. But Scheben, I'm angry.
I can see that.
I mean every word of it.
I know you do. Well, it's part of the divide and conquer strategy against the poor and minorities.
Yeah.
And probably the sneaker company got to cash in on their insurance claim for stolen shoes. It's a win-win.
I have to admire our black friends for protesting. I have to admire them. I hope that we, the rest of us, have the courage to do the same and protest peacefully.